Alright guys, coming with another video. Somebody asked me to discuss this topic. I think it's a good one. There's a couple different teams I'm going to cover here. We're going to cover wide receiver trios. In fact, I think I'm going to do three teams. We're going to go with the Seahawks, we're going to do the Bears, and the Texans wide receiver trios. Try to work through that and figure out, based on the ADPs, who should we be looking at. We're going to start off with the Seahawks, my hometown team. Do have a little more insight probably than most just by listening to the beat reporters and knowing the new coaching staff and how they're going to use players and also these players' histories. So let's get into it. Let's talk about DK Metcalf here. So DK, kind of a weird year last year when you look at his stats. He had his second lowest receptions, second lowest targets, but he had the second highest yardage total. Obviously, with the addition of JSN, you can expect probably the receptions and the targets to have gone down a little bit, but his yardage was still there. He averaged a career high 16.9 yards per reception. Now, I want to keep in mind, I mentioned this in another video, the Seahawks had one of the lowest just play total as an offense in the NFL and time of possession. They did not have the ball because of how bad their defense was. They were basically forced to try and score every time they had the ball. They're going to have a much better defense this year, have a lot more opportunities offensively. Ryan Grubb, who is our new offensive coordinator, coming over from UW, had a very, very, very explosive offense. He used a lot of 10 and 11 personnel, aka 3 receiver and 4 receiver sets. They had 3 great receivers at UW who just got drafted. Rome Odunze was 9th, I believe. Then they had a second rounder, Jalen Polk, and I think a third rounder in McMillan. So he knows how to handle that, those having 3 good options. Again, explosive downfield passing. He's very creative with motions and getting playmakers into advantageous positions. Something that I don't think the Seahawks offense has done well the entire Pete Carroll era, despite who the offensive coordinator was. I think it's been one of their biggest flaws, actually. Geno, despite some of his criticisms, he is, statistically, like according to multiple different people who track this kind of stuff, big throw percentage or whatever it is, right? Stuff like that. And then the deep ball accuracy, he is one of the better deep ball throwers in the league. At least the last couple of years he has been. And if you just watch the tape, that's just the way too. It's pretty obvious, jumps off the tape. There's a ton of offensive and defensive players throughout this whole camp in this offseason who, when they were asked about the new offense, they just were raving. And they got big old beaming smiles on their face, talking about how explosive and creative it is. It's not going to be your very old, very routine, vanilla offense that we're used to with the Seahawks. So I expect him to actually have a career year. Now, his best season was 1,300 yards. He's had rookie year, he had 7 touchdowns, then he had 10, then 12, then 6 and 8. So he's always been a pretty good touchdown scorer. I don't know if he'll get over 1,300 yards, but I do think he's going to have right around that number and right around double-digit touchdowns, and probably maybe he might get the most receptions he's had in his career. I think they're going to find a lot of ways to get him open. So I like his ADP, which is about 40 right now. I would consider taking him mid to late third. There's a lot of receivers in that range that I like him more than this year. I like him more like a Drake London, So, anyways, I am in on DK at his ADP. Also, just a little side note I forgot to add. DK has only missed 2 games in his career. It's been 1 game each of the last 2 seasons. So that is another huge thing for your fantasy team, is being able to just rely on a guy to be there, which is interesting because he had a lot of issues being healthy in college. So best ability is availability, as they like to say. All right, let's get to JSN. Going into year 2, his ADP right now is 103. I want to just point out, last year he started the year right before 2 or 3 weeks before the season. He broke his wrist. Now, he did not miss game time, but he was very clearly not quite the same guy. He dropped a few passes early in the season, which are pretty uncharacteristic. Overall, just got a slow start to the year. A couple huge points I want to make. I forget what the stat was. Somebody said that out of his 63 receptions, I think it was like 28 or 29 were behind the line of scrimmage, which was absolutely what you saw as a Seahawks fan watching last year. It was almost maddening. You know, behind the line of scrimmage or very, very short within 5 yards. Probably 40 of his catches, I would guess. And this is a guy that everyone talks about how, I mean, CJ Stroud, I think when he was coming out, said that this was the best route runner he's ever seen. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and those guys in JSN, they were a receiving trio at Ohio State, and they were all asked who the best athlete or player was, and they both said JSN. And this is going to be another point for the Shane Waldron, who was our OC last year. He was now on the Bears, who interestingly have another good receiving trio. But we'll talk more about that in that video. His average depth of target was 6.1 yards. That is not good. That is very low. That ranked 95th. His target separation. So I believe what this stat is when he's thrown to, how much separation does he have on the guy, was 2.32, which ranks 6th. So clearly when he does run routes, he's getting some separation. The other thing too was his snap share last year was 65%, and he played 65%, coincidentally, of his snaps in the slot. There's also been talk that he's going to be moved around a bit. Ryan Grubb likes to move guys around, and he's not just going to only really play in the slot. So you might see more of him on the outside this year, just trying to get creative and find ways to get him open. With the ADP of 100, I mean, I am very much so in. In fact, I would draft him maybe a round, maybe even 2 rounds higher than what he's going. You saw already a connection just in the preseason. Geno's finding him early in camp, and we're talking, when they're in the 7-on-7 type stuff. But there was a day I remember where some beat reporter reported he had like 7 or 8 touchdowns just in that day, and that he's just been dominating and uncoverable. Definitely do not be afraid to draft him, especially where he's going this year. All right, now we're going to Tyler Lockett. This guy has just been Mr. Consistent the last 5 or 6 years. His ADP of 130. So he started out his career with like 650, 600, 550 yardage first 3 years. Pretty crowded receiver room at that time. But then he's at 965, 1,057, 1,054, 1,175, 1,033, and just shy of 900 last year. Just touchdowns after those first 3 years. 10, 8, 10, 8, 9, and then 5 last year. So definitely a slight fall off from that, 1,000 to 1,100 every single year. I mean, he's just shy of 900, still pretty good. He is going to be, I think, the third option now. But with an ADP of 130 and a offense that's obviously going to be explosive, which Tyler Lockett is still, he can be an explosive receiver. He has that one game every year he puts up 200 yards and like 3 touchdowns. If something were to happen to either DK or JSN, and I'm going to knock on wood here, he could still put up those numbers that we've seen in the previous 4 or 5 years and be kind of like a low-end receiver 2, early receiver 3 kind of guy. If that's if something were to happen to them for, any stretch of time. For an ADP of 130, that's not bad. I mean, you don't want him to be a starter or a flex, but if he's like your 4th, 5th, even 6th, depending on your roster size, that's not bad. That's why I do think, in conclusion here, that really all these guys' ADPs are pretty good. I'm probably more likely to draft DK. I think my favorite value out of the guys is JSN at about 100. I would be fine drafting him in the 80s. And I'd be fine drafting DK above. Use some examples here. DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle. I like him more than Drake London this year. Mike Evans maybe, but just that kind of range. I think he's gonna have a monster year. And I believe, just to touch up on DK, his career reception or touchdown was like 10 or 12. He could be pushing that this year. He really could. So yeah, don't be afraid to draft these guys. Next video we're gonna do, I'll cover the Bears trio, and man, it's gonna have some interesting thoughts there, and being familiar with Shane Waldron, their new offensive coordinator. So Thank you guys for watching. I know this is a little bit late in the draft season. I still have a draft coming up tomorrow, and then I have another one on Monday. So if you're seeing this and it's too late, well, I apologize for doing it so late. But I am going to be doing probably some weekly videos on daily fantasy and some betting stuff as well. So if you enjoy the videos, if you feel like I give out some good information and whatnot, then go ahead and follow and stay tuned for those. And if not, and you have some criticisms, please let me know. I enjoy a conversation about football. So thank you guys for watching.